Hey, if you've been wondering what to do with all this plastic in your life, you're not alone. People all around the world are struggling to make sense of plastic recycling, especially because it often seems like we're just recycling the same old stuff, and yeah, things aren't great. There's so much plastic waste, in fact, that the ocean now contains more plastic than fish. And that's why finding a solution to this problem is so important. One potential game changer when it comes to dealing with plastic is called Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR. But what is it? We'll get right into it, so stay tuned. First up, let's start with the basics. What is EPR? Well, Extended Producer Responsibility is a policy approach that makes producers responsible, usually financially and/or physically, for the treatment or disposal of post-consumer products. In other words, when a company produces a product, they need to take care of it once the customer is done with it. This means they need to find a way to recycle it or dispose of it properly, rather than just passing the buck to consumers or governments. But why does this matter? Why should companies be held responsible for their products after customers are done with them? Well, here's the thing. Most products, especially those made from plastic, are designed to be used only once and then thrown away. That is bad news for the planet, since it generates a lot of waste and resources that could be reused are instead discarded. Now imagine if someone were to drop litter on the street. Sure, it's an eyesore and a pain to clean up, but it doesn't really harm anyone, at least not in the moment. However, what if that trash started piling up? What if it attracted pests and diseases? Suddenly, the situation becomes much more serious. Well, that's kind of what's happening with our planet. The waste we produce isn't just a temporary annoyance. If left unchecked, it will have serious consequences for us and future generations. So how does EPR help us solve this problem? Well, EPR works by giving producers an incentive to make their products more environmentally friendly. If they know they'll be responsible for their products once they're no longer wanted, they'll be much more likely to design them with sustainability in mind. Instead of throwing something away, why not make it easy to reuse, recycle, or even compost? But how does this work in practice? Well, let's take a look at some real-world examples. Some countries like Germany, South Korea, and Canada have already implemented strong EPR laws, which has led to some pretty impressive results. For example, Germany's EPR scheme has led to a significant increase in plastic recycling rates. Before EPR was introduced, only about 15% of plastic packaging was recycled. But after the new laws were passed, recycling rates jumped to nearly 60%. That's a huge improvement and shows that EPR can really make a difference. So how exactly does EPR work to reduce plastic waste? Well, it works in a few ways. First, EPR encourages producers to design plastic packaging that is easier to recycle, reuse, or made from more eco-friendly materials. As we mentioned before, when companies know they'll be responsible for their packaging once it's no longer wanted, they're much more likely to design it with sustainability in mind. They might choose to use less plastic, opt for recycled materials, or simply make it easier to disassemble so that the components can be recycled separately. Second, EPR also helps to increase the amount of plastic that is actually recycled. When EPR laws are in place, companies are usually required to pay a fee based on the amount of plastic they produce. This fee goes into a fund that is used to pay for recycling programs. As a result, companies have an incentive to design their packaging so that it can be recycled more easily, which ultimately reduces the amount of plastic that goes to waste. Finally, EPR also helps to shift the cost of recycling from consumers to producers. When we buy products, the price we pay often includes the cost of recycling, but these costs are usually hidden. With EPR, the costs of recycling are explicitly placed on the producers, which gives them a direct incentive to reduce their environmental impact. Now, you might be wondering who exactly pays under EPR. Well, it's simple: the producers. With EPR, producers cover the cost of collecting, recycling, and disposing of plastic waste, rather than consumers or governments. This can be done through a variety of mechanisms, such as through the fees we mentioned earlier, or through the purchase of recycled content, or by taking back used products. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so what are the benefits of EPR? Well, there are quite a few. Firstly, EPR leads to less plastic waste. By encouraging producers to design more sustainable products and shifting the cost of recycling from consumers to producers, EPR reduces the amount of plastic that ends up in landfills or polluting the environment. Secondly, EPR leads to more eco-friendly products. EPR encourages producers to use less plastic, opt for recycled materials, and make products easier to disassemble. This means that even if a product does end up in the waste stream, it's less harmful to the environment. Thirdly, EPR leads to greater recycling rates. By placing the responsibility and cost of recycling on producers, EPR increases the amount of material that is actually recycled. Finally, EPR promotes accountability for companies. With EPR, companies can no longer pass the buck when it comes to their products' environmental impact. They are directly responsible for their products once they are no longer wanted and must take action to ensure they are recycled properly. In conclusion, EPR is an effective way to reduce plastic waste and promote sustainability. By making producers responsible for their products once they're no longer wanted, EPR encourages them to design more sustainable products, increases the amount of plastic that is actually recycled, and holds them accountable for the environmental impact of their products. It's a win-win for both the planet and consumers. Now that you know how EPR works to reduce plastic waste, here are some ways you can support this effort. First, support brands with sustainable packaging. By choosing to buy products with eco-friendly packaging, you send a clear message to companies that you value sustainability and are willing to pay a bit more for it. Look for brands that are already implementing EPR principles, such as using less plastic, opting for recycled materials, and making their packaging easy to recycle. Also, vote for EPR laws. If you're a voter, make sure to stay informed about EPR laws in your country and vote for candidates who support them. By voting, you can help ensure that your country's leaders know that you value EPR and want them to implement it. Educate others about plastic responsibility. One of the best ways to support EPR is to educate others about it. Share what you've learned with your friends, family, and colleagues, and encourage them to take action as well. You can also get involved with advocacy groups that are pushing for stronger EPR laws. Together, you can make a real difference. Plastic pollution is one of the biggest challenges facing our planet today, but we can't afford to be pessimistic. By working together, we can find solutions that benefit both the planet and its people. So don't feel helpless. Take action today and be part of the solution. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about EPR? Do you think it's an effective way to reduce plastic waste? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on sustainability. Thanks for watching.